If you don't trust what you do, people aren't going to follow that. If you're always thinking about yourself, then you'll build the organization based off yourself. I want to work with people who want to actually work, like who really want to go after stuff.
People are so afraid to have to think for themselves.
I don't want to stay the same.
Welcome back to another episode of the New Roles Podcast. It's your girl, Breezy, and I am here with Adrian Crawford. How are you doing today? This is the first time I've seen you all day.
I know. It has been a busy day. Woke up really early, got my hair cut, then I had to meet with the client for a little crisis, helped them through that.
Oh, who'd you meet with?
And then I met with them. And then after I did that, had some work stuff I had to do. Then I had a call with another one of our potential new business partners that we're working with. And so did that about a potential deal. Yeah,
You've been working.
I've been working. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, man, I get stuff done when I'm out of this office sometimes. So.
I feel you. Okay, so curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do 2 minutes of real. How you feeling? How you been? Honest answer.
I'm kind of in a place of being very focused. I'm also in the place of, just it's focus, determination. I'm also in uncharted waters as far as in leadership, as far as where I know I need to go and lead, and I feel I feel like I'm supposed to do it, but it's also uncharted water. So sometimes uncharted waters, you feel a certain type of way, because what I never wanted to happen is leadership or my leadership to impact people in a negative manner when that's not I'm not trying to do that. But just, I know where, what we're supposed to be doing. So it's just I'm just focused on just where we're at. And so, so it's just kind of I don't know. So it's a lot. It's there's levels of fear, there's levels of determination, just locked in. So a little bit of that. So it's kind of where I'm at.
You're very driven and futuristic. Do you find yourself in the state that you currently are often? If not, what's your range? Where are the places that you usually find yourself?
Usually the range, it just depends. The range, it moves a lot for me. You know what I mean? I tell people, sometimes the way, the range is really high. I am energized. I'm ready to go. I can see this, And then sometimes it can just be super low, where it's more of a depressed state, more of a hopeless state. So I kind of live in those kind of ranges. And then sometimes it's just so if I say I kind of go high and low, and so I just kind of have gotten used to riding the wave, and I know if I hit low, I kind of have practices and things I do to kind of ride it. So okay, I gotta get out of this. Sometimes I just know how to ride it out, and go from there. So I kind of live in just extremes a lot, honestly.
Can you connect the dots between why where you are right now generates a fear of how you're going to lead people through it?
Because I know humans, and I think when people are used to you a certain way and then you begin to be another way, then the thing is that they'll begin to say oh, you're changing, or oh, it used to be whatever. And the truth is yeah, I am. I don't want to stay the same. I think we should evolve and be better. It's just normally whenever that's the case, it's I want to make sure I'm never doing that in a way that I live where I'm delusional, that man, sometimes when people get like this, they can do that and then really just be a jerk for the sake of being a jerk, or really just I don't care about what people think, and just say, well, I'm changing and you're not, so you're wrong. No, sometimes I could be off. So I don't ever want to be off, but I'm also realizing too, when you lead, it's just this reality. People, you become many times the thing, because they don't want to, you're asking them for change, and they don't want to lose. They don't want people fear loss. So when I get in these moments like this, I just have the fear of people who I love and care for, I don't want to hurt them. But I also realize too, is I don't have the luxury to sacrifice what I feel that I'm supposed to do, for the sake of just one person or a couple people, when it's no, this is where we're going. And if people want to be on board, that's awesome. If they don't want to be on board, that's great. They're not wrong for that at all. But I'm just not, I don't want to apologize for that stuff anymore. I feel like I do that so much. I just see and I'm not saying this, it's not better. I just see the world the way I see the world. And just like some people see the world in very ways like that are very steady and practical, right? That's a beautiful thing, and you need people like that. But also, it's when people like me see things that maybe not are there first or moving in the direction before you get there, it's always like, it's always difficult for people sometimes to change and go with that. And then when people want to grow, that's one of the biggest things. People talk a lot about growth, and so you have to put the weight on the bar to grow. So I think a lot of times what we want, I kind of say like leadership, a lot of times what people want, when you go to the gym and those like sometimes a hotel, they have like those like the free weight bench press, but it's the one that has like, it's not like a normal bench press stand. It's kind of like on hydraulics a little bit, so you feel the weight, but it's kind of guided, and you can like put it on the rack whenever you want to. It's kind of like that, where it's like it's still heavy, but it's like but it's safe. And I'm like, nah man, like to really, again, if you want to go do certain things, you have to carry weight to do those things if you want to lead in certain ways. And I think just being able, my responsibility is like, I can't hold the weight for people. My job is like, hey, here's what it is. You have to make a decision if you want to carry the weight or not carry the weight. If you don't, that's okay. You're not wrong. So I think I get fearful of that because I care for people and I love them and I want them to be great. But I also realize sometimes I get in the way from them being what they need to be and us being what we need to be. And so it's just kind of, I think that's where the fear comes from.
Thank you for sharing.
Appreciate it.
Going into the beginning of 2024, it's actually when we first started putting a lot of energy to the podcast, energy, time, resources, thought. And I personally, I've been so grateful for the growth that we've seen, the community that has built.
Absolutely.
I'm grateful for people who listen to us, who trust us. I think for me, I really value access points. I know how important it is to be this is going to sound off, but like to be a consumer, like what you decide to go into your ears and your mind and your heart is so critical and so valuable. And so for those of you who have decided to trust us, to speak into your mind and your heart, your leadership, all these different principles, we really appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I want to, it's always a trip to me that when you just see people and they're like, oh yeah, we listen to your podcast and da-da-da-da. And I'm like, oh, and it's like, whether if it's people when I'm not in Tallahassee or if I'm in Tallahassee or whatever. And so that part is really cool. And then people say, oh man, this really is like, it's super helpful. Really like it, and so, I mean, it's just always like an honor that people actually would do that, and whatever. So that's really cool. So we do really appreciate that. And I appreciate you and Lauren and LaVonna and everybody who like really pushed to keep doing this, because I'm a type of person, this, it was like, you made me commit to like, we're not quitting this podcast no matter what. Cause there's multiple times, like, I'm not doing this anymore, man. We're wasting time, blah, blah, blah. But I actually have seen,
and it's been a stretch. It has cost us.
It has, yes.
To put the time and the energy into the podcast.
Yeah, it's put time, energy, and it's time, energy, and money. The equation of being able to do something like this. And so, but I do think there's a lot that I've learned. It's a lot of ideas that we've been able to kind of come out of here, generate with. And I think it's just going to keep evolving. I think that's how things have always worked. I know for me, it's like you start one way. And then like it just evolves, kind of like when we first started doing consulting, it was like through DEI. And then we got into, we're like, okay, this has to be more expansive. So then it went to like authentic culture. Then it went from authentic culture, now it's like, man, okay, then we got to really dive into coaching and leadership. Now, we're about to hit the next evolution like of our company coming up. And so again, when it's always said and done, I think that's just how things work. And and that's really important to know how like your life works. Some people get something in their vision, they get it, and that's what they stick with. It's always just been for me like just the evolution. And it's like, okay, just put one foot in front of the other, and it's okay to change. I used to always get frustrated. So I'm like, well, why can't we just know fully what this is and do it from here and whatever? But it's just all process of learning. But the great thing about it, where I feel like we've been very fortunate, is that we've like just evolved and grown through stuff. And like I tell people, we get paid like for like research and development. We help people, and in the same breath, we're doing research and development. So like a lot of people have to go raise a bunch of money to then do this. We're like, no, like people are we're helping them, but then we're also helping ourselves and kind of building it out. And so that part's been really cool. And this podcast is just another way of doing it.
Yeah. As a listener, I think one thing you'll start to notice is a little bit more freestyle, a little bit more off the cuff conversations. I think that we focus a ton on principles, which we will never lose that. The point of this podcast is to share what it is that we're learning. But at a level, I think we'd also like to see it start to show up a little bit more like our diary. like 5-10 years from now, can we look back at the podcast and see what are the things that we were wrestling with, what are the things that we were thinking through, and how did we share honestly and authentically, because obviously it's such a value of ours, what it was like to work through that. And so we hope that within the next year that we begin to do a better job of letting you in on what it is that we're doing, what it is that we're thinking about.
Yeah, because again, I think there's, sometimes I think when I would want to be like, man, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, is because like, okay, it's like authentic leadership, which I love. But then it's also in the same breath, I'm like, dude, I'm really passionate about like entrepreneurship and launching and venture. And like, man, I'm really passionate about like sports and athletics. I'm really, about mental health. I'm really passionate about, man, just like futuristic things of where the world's going. Sometimes, like geopolitics and things like that, and how it impacts just our everyday and whatever. And so for me, I just, that's where I was kind of like, sometimes I'd be like, oh, should we keep doing this? Because I'm like, I felt like, it's just going to be on authentic leadership. But it's really about authenticity. And I think what you're saying is perfect. Like, we're going to have a podcast talking about this idea of authenticity. Then like, I think it's more and more us continuing to keep being more and more authentic. And I think you do have to have a focus at the beginning and whatever. And I think it's just going to keep evolving. So I'm really excited about what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, so in our first episode, I believe it was, of 2024, we actually talked about what our expectations were for the year, what expectations did we have for ourselves, what was our theme. And so we do want to circle back to that because it's a promise that we made months ago. Usually we don't do that. Usually we forget about it. Usually we just don't want to do it. We change our mind.
To the next thing.
Yeah. To be frank, we're already living in August of next year.
Yes.
We are, months ahead of it, but we do think that reflection is important. And so we want to share a little bit more about how it is that we've been reflecting over 2024 and what it is we're hoping for 2025. So take us back. It's December of 2023. What it is, cuz.
What it is,
What's up? Okay. Okay, log in. Take us back to what it is that you were expecting. What were your expectations?
So every year I have a theme, and that theme, sometimes it comes to me earlier or whatever, but this one, actually, I'm almost positive, I think it was like January 1st. It was like actually on New Year's Day, I was sitting outside, and outside in our house on the back porch area, and it was like, and just what kept coming to me and what I've been feeling is this idea about being very clear. And so this whole mantra came in my head of clarity wears the crown, because I think it's so many times I would be very passive about things, or kind of like questioning things, or always worried what other people may think about them. And I just felt one of the things that I was feeling to do was be very, very clear, because I actually do believe clarity does wear the crown. I believe when you are clear, that's what people look for. I think I was like Andy Stanley once said, he's like, people want character, but people follow clarity. People want character, but they follow clarity. And I just have realized, like, no, I've got to become that. And so, so that was kind of the thing of like, clarity wears the crown. And so that has been kind of the mantra starting back then. And so I didn't know what that would look like, how that would play out, what that would mean. But it's been kind of a journey over this last year.
Looking back, how have you changed?
I think I did not realize that when I was saying clarity wears the crown, I didn't realize that this year how much clarity I would get. I thought it was a lot more about my communication to people, to things, exactly what the expectation were, which was part of it. But actually, as this year is coming to an end, it's really been like, man, just very clear, more and more. Okay, this is what the next season, and it's like almost every day, it's just like a layer gets removed. I'm like, oh, okay. Like even this morning, I was like literally like, okay, like what is it? And it was like, man, every day, remember the thing that you told me on my birthday, like, hey, every day I feel like you're supposed to wake up and just pray and ask God, what should I focus on today? And I'm telling you, it's been a while. Every day I do it. It's like, okay. And today I did it. I was driving, and it was like, oh, and another layer came off. And so I feel like I've gotten more clarity internally and personally of what it is that I think the next 10 to 15 years, like I don't fully know what it's supposed to like fully what it's going to look like, but I know the direction and where to kind of go. And so that's kind of where, so Sarah.
Where do you feel like you fumbled?
Yeah, I fumbled and kind of still hedging a little bit when it's coming to clients. I think sometimes with clients that we work with, I mean, you start having the responsibility to, there's staff, there's payroll, there's whatever. And sometimes when I got into this, the whole thing was like, I never want to be held hostage by a client, where you just keep doing the work because you have to do the work because you have to pay bills, right? And I feel like a couple times I did that, and that kind of frustrated me. I feel like I wasn't clear, you know what I mean? And so I feel like that as the year has gone on, I feel like I'm getting a lot more clear with that. Like, nope, this is what we do. And if not, yeah, man, we'll move on. We'll trust and we'll figure something else out.
How have you learned to own that? The mistake, both with yourself, the client, and also with the team?
I think how I've learned to own the mistake personally has been, it's the fact of like, if you don't trust what you do, people aren't going to follow that, right? Remember, people follow clarity. And so a lot of times it would just be me like, oh, if a client has some pushback, it would be like, I would instantly, sometimes I go to questioning myself, well, what about this? And, maybe, and then versus being like, no, like, this is right, this is wrong, this is whatever, and then just do that. So I've learned to like, okay, to one, make sure before I'm saying this, okay, am I really clear on this? Yep, perfect. Okay, so if I am, then it's like, yeah, there's no like, I'm not gonna like, back away from it, whatever. I think with the client, it's just been being more direct. And then I think with our team, it's just the expectation. It's just, carrying the weight. I think with our team, as we take the next step, to get to next levels and next steps, most of the times what it is that you have to be willing to make room, get out of the way for people on your team to take the next step up. But they also have to be prepared for taking the next step up and carrying the weight that's going to happen with that. Everybody wants to move up without realizing like, yeah, you're going to put more weight on the bar. And that's what it is. And it's a risk. Everything in life's a risk. There's no such thing as like a secure job. And so like, yeah, if you want to go do this, it's just a risk, and you got to be willing to take that risk. And if you're not, you need to be self-aware enough to know like, yeah, I don't like taking risks like that. I don't want to. And that's cool. That's not wrong. But what can happen sometimes is like people want you to give them their perfect world. And then they also want the advantages or like the risk, or they want the reward of what like an entrepreneur would get or what somebody's doing this. But I tell people like, no, like one of my mentors said this. He's like, the person who starts first and does it, yeah, a lot of times they get the lion's share of stuff. And there's a reason why, because they took all the risk. And I think a lot of times when I hear people talk about that a lot of, well, people should get this and do this. I'm like, no, you should 100% be treated fairly, and sometimes above and beyond that, just because of, I think you should take care of people. But to ever think that you should be at the same level from sometimes an economic standpoint or an influence standpoint than somebody who kind of started, it's unrealistic because of what went into it. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's where, for me, it's just making sure everyone like owns that and just being unapologetic about that. And I think the other thing about with the team too is like, man, giving room, like empowering people, and me honestly getting out of the way. And I think I've learned more, man, what I look for inside of people. And I think that like people to carry stuff within what we do, I care about you being coachable, but also, man, I care that like it matters to you. It's not about you getting a next, like this is, again, I'm all about people moving and advancing, but in what we're doing, the size of where we're at, you got to own it and you got to really care about it, where it's like, oh no, I care about it. Like, I don't expect people to care about it the way I do, but you got to care about it like at a high level, not just, this is the next step for me. It's like, no, because we think so much about other people. If you don't carry that, then if you're always thinking about yourself, then you'll build the organization based off yourself. And I feel like we're moving in a place where there's people who really do carry it, and where I know they're going to take this thing and even make it better than I would, because they care and they have a skill set that I don't have.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I feel like we hold very tightly is that nobody across the entire organization, the many organizations, can just be a taskmaster. It's like everyone has to be, we use the term visionary and integrator a lot from, what is that from?
It's rocket fuel.
Rocket fuel. Everybody at some level is a visionary and is an integrator for their little domain. It's also one of the reasons why we call executive level leadership, quote unquote, within the organization's architects. It means that you are over the design of what you oversee every day constantly, and that's never ending.
Yeah. And, I was reading a quote today. Like I have this thing is, and I can't remember where I got the name. It's called the Book of Commonplaces. And what it is that I can't remember. It was one of the founding fathers, somebody like that. They had this thing called the Book of Commonplaces. And it was a thing where they would put like quotes and just things and, and stories they would hear that were like very impactful. And, like, so I have this thing, Book of Commonplaces, where it's just like quotes. It could be leadership, entrepreneurship, faith, whatever. And something I wrote, I just literally for some reason read it today, and I put like a quote, something I said before, and I just read it before I came over here, and it was like, I want to work with people. I want to work with people who want to. I was like, I want to work with people who want a purpose, not a paycheck. That's the thing for me. I don't care to work. Like, again, there gotta be people in your organization who want a paycheck. That's fine, but to lead here, there's no shot. If you're doing it for a paycheck, like to lead, I'm not saying you have, functional things, whatever, or technical things, but to do that, no way. Because, man, I want a purpose. I don't want people to work for a paycheck, because paychecks like come and go, but purpose or something greater, a mission. No, because you'll go above and beyond that. That's the thing. I am becoming unapologetic. I want to work with people who want to actually work, like who really want to go after stuff. And I don't want to feel bad anymore, or feel like that because like I'm doing this and that this is greater, because we live in such a world today that people who have ambition, healthy ambition to go chase stuff, they're seen as villains, because people just want that, well, here's this balance and here's this. I'm like, that's fine. Like, that's what you want for your life. Praise God. That's amazing. I don't. I want to go do something with my life that makes this impact. And that does not mean that like my family or my friends or my whatever don't matter to me, but this matters to me as well. And I think I'm just honest about it. This is what it is. And you know what? And there's sacrifice that goes along with that on both sides. And so I just want to do that. Like, yeah, if you're going to work here, dude, you got to work. Like, you got to work and you got to produce. You can't. It's okay. You're not wrong. You're not bad. But like, we have to do that, because I feel a responsibility to steward what it is that God has placed in our hands. I feel and a stewardship is not just taking, okay, this all messed up. No, a stewardship is you put something in the ground and you get a return on it. And so I believe we have a responsibility in life to do that. And I think if you're not taking your talents, your skills, your abilities, your resources, and getting a return on that, meaning not just one, you're not getting a return on that, I don't believe you are stewarding your life. I don't believe you steward your friendships. I don't believe you steward any of those things. You're not stewarding. You're not taking care of them if there's not a return. If it's just like, oh, it's just the same. If the job you're doing is just the same. If the place you're working at is just the same. If the oversight you had is just the same, it's not better. I don't think you're a good steward, because I think it should be better. And I know we could say, well, the organization and I'm just telling you, I've been in crappy leadership positions. I've been in places where it was like, oh, this leadership is awful. And but I've also said almost every place I've been, I can almost say almost every place I've been, what I started with when I was done was better. There were more people, more leaders, more money, more whatever. The production was better, whatever it was. And so I just think that's what you have to do. And I don't know how I went down this rabbit hole, but that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah, I mean, the idea of visionary and integrator is the fact that visionary is someone, again, I think people that like, they see, let's just a simple, 30,000 feet, 50,000 feet up, and they're like, hey, we're going here. An integrator is someone who can take that and put systems in place, a process and plan in place. So the best way I can explain is like a visionary could say, hey, we're going to build a city here. An integrator will put the infrastructure in for there to be a city. You can't survive without somebody actually seeing, because a lot of times, just imagine a city, all you see is a forest, and you're like, and the integrator won't see anything. They're like, well, I can put down some streets, but I don't know what this looks like. But a visionary be like, oh no, hey, we're gonna have the park over here. Man, this is gonna be the downtown area right here. We're gonna have, hey, this is gonna be where we put the campus stuff over here. Man, the kind of the suburbs will be over here. This is gonna be more the art district over here, because if we do this, hey, we're gonna do manufacturing, and you can just see the whole picture. And now you give it to an integrator, say, okay, because you put it to a visionary, boy, he'll have like roads and pipes running all over the city. It won't connect, because he'll just know I can get there. But an integrator will make it very efficient, and it makes it reproducible. So people who do come in, they're able to flow and make it better. And so an integrator takes it down and breaks it down. I've never like gave it that as an example before, but yeah, it was like was I playing The Sims? I don't know what game I've been playing. It was like, was it?
He's been obsessed with The Sims.
Yeah, it was on my, I think I've been playing on my phone because what it was that, and the reason why I said it, because I was playing it, I never played it when it was really popular, I never played it. And so I was like sitting on a plane, I was in an airport, and I was on a plane.
Yeah, we're going to LA or something.
Yeah, we're going to, I'm like, dude, all right, I've like, I don't feel like working right now or reading, I just want to do something. So I just like downloaded it and started playing, and dude, I was like obsessed because like, the visionary part of me was like, okay, I see this, but here's what was crazy. It took me a minute, but like, I was like, dude, I want to start over because like, I had like, oh, it's going to be this and but dude, I put the infrastructure in so bad. I mean, I had like, like one place over here.
This is not what I
envisioned. Like one place over here had like no water. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like no water. This place over here had like sanitation. This one didn't have sanitation. I was just like, oh, but I mean, like the buildings and everything, like we were making money, we were producing, but like the stuff. So I'm like, oh, this is why I do not implement systems integration. So that is what a visionary and an integrator is.
Yeah, and I think some of what we're saying too is how much that's required at every level. Like every visionary like quality doesn't need to be the 30,000 foot person thinking at the broadest, most highest level. That is incredibly crucial. But from the analogy of building a city, it's like, well, you don't care whether the city has an ice cream shop or whatever it might be. You have your non-negotiables, but there has to be somebody who says, I want an ice cream shop and I want it to be like this. And so there's a level of visionary that can be executed at every level along with integration.
Yeah. And I also think too, it's like, I will say this with visionary integrator, I had to learn like integration stuff when I started a business because you don't have anybody. So, I'm over there doing QuickBooks and, which is, God, thank God I never like, the IRS didn't like, I was good with my taxes, right? Because like you're trying to figure it out. But what I did learn, it made me really appreciate people who are that, who actually can like do integration and things like that. The problem is that with visionaries, sometimes we have visionaries, they're always like, man, we're going da-da-da, and it sounds great and whatever. And it can honestly feel so like, well, you're not doing the real work. You're not doing the da-da-da-da. And I just try to tell people, I'm like, if it wasn't for visionaries, you wouldn't have the stuff who can create momentum. I always like to say it this way. If you don't have visionaries, man, like you just have a well-organized funeral, like, you know what I mean? But if you don't have like integrators, you'll just have a flood and kill people. And so I think that's the tension that you have to live in. And I think as a visionary, you have to be self-aware. As an integrator, you have to be self-aware. And why this is amazing is because like with you, there's you have a very unique like profile, and it's like you've had to learn to really dive in for the integration part, but there's something greater and bigger, like you care for the mission. But a lot of times I'll go to you like, hey, we're meeting with this person. Here's where we're at. But you'll be like, hey, because you'll look at it, nope, I think you should talk about da-da-da-da. So you'll help me get the points. And so instead of me sitting there like turning around in my head, I know what I'm trying to get to the heart. But you're like, okay, but we got to make sure practically they're walking through this, and this. Because some people I work with are very much so integrators. So if I'm talking to a visionary, it's all good. I can just talk to them all day. But if I'm talking to somebody who's an integrator, at some point in time, they're going to want to know what's practical. Okay, what do I do from here? And for me, I just naturally feel my way to that. But for them, they need a step. And you've always been really helpful. So I think you need to be able to use people like that. And if you're not if people listening, if you're not a visionary, that's okay. Get somebody around you who is one, like, man, what would you do with this? Oh, I would do this, and this. And then you kind of go practically do it. You know what I'm saying? And if you're a visionary, man, get integrators in your life. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do want to get back to theme of the year, but before we go back to that, I want to acknowledge something. It's something that we talk about every now and then on here, but that we haven't had a major discussion on, but it is a daily reoccurrence for us. And we really value the development and going into places that are overlooked and increasing the standard. Somewhere like a Tallahassee, Florida, where it's not a major city, it's not the LA, it's not the New York, it's not the London. And one of the practical challenges about being in spaces like that, and that being some of the vision, is that you are ridiculed because there is a certain pace, a certain standard that's already set that you're coming in and you're disrupting. And so the pace of which you work, having a standard for how things are produced, a level of excellence. And some of that's shown in the church space too. We have talked about that, but it's also true to just the city that we live in as a whole and the cities that we hope to expand to. And so I would just want to acknowledge that that is a challenge that we do face on an everyday basis. And that's some of the perspective that you're coming from when you're saying, like, when I come at things with this level of energy, it causes a massive disruption that can lead people to not liking me.
Yeah, because I think what people do in cities like this, people just want things to stay the same, and when you try to be different, they're like, oh, they try to dumb you down from doing that. And I think that's where the toughness has to come in. And that's what's been happening for me, like the toughness coming in. I'm like, yeah, man, like this is just what I mean, everybody's like, well, what exactly do you do? And I'm like, I don't freaking care if I have to explain to you what I do or what I don't do or whatever. I just do these things, you know? So, I mean, I help people understand, we run an authenticity design firm, and like, well, what is that? And is that just like, you know, and they try to like, I'm like, no, this is what this means, whatever. But I just have gotten to a place to where I'm like, I know there is the reality of practical. People do need some things, but I'm also like, yeah, but that's not me. And I'm learning to be more of that, because it's those things to where, when I came to Tallahassee, doing basketball skill training, this is in the early 2000s. No one was really doing this a lot in the country. Basketball and like Tallahassee isn't like the hub of like innovation. Okay. Like, I mean, people leave here and innovate, but like, I mean, cause there's so many incredible students at Florida State, Florida A&M, and again, Tallahassee Community College. I know they call it Tallahassee, whatever we call it now, Tallahassee College or Tallahassee State. Is that what they call it?
Know.
Whatever it is. I'm just saying this. Mama call it Community College. I'm calling it TCC. All right. So it's still TCC to me. But anyway, here's the deal.
Us not accepting the new as we talk
Yes,
about the
yeah.
crucial importance of accepting the new.
But here's what I would say is that when I came back here, no one was doing this. And it was like, and I got ridiculed for it. What are you doing? High school, nobody, you're not going to make, I mean, basketball skill training, who's going to pay for that? Blah, 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 blah. And then people's mind, well, you know, listen, black kids can't afford to do that. Blah, blah. I mean, like, dude, that was all the stuff that was said. And I'm like, okay, and you're not going to be able to do this. And you don't have a gym, you have this. And so I was like, okay. And so now, looking at it, we literally went in and created a culture where there was no Division I players produced. We started producing them. There was no culture. There's no AAU basketball teams. Now there's way too many of them. There was nothing. And we literally created a culture, and then we built the culture. And here's the reality now. And now with what we're doing with Equal Shot, to be honest with you, we literally steward the culture now. We don't own it. We steward the culture. You want to get best basketball player, you come through us. Because we develop kids, we care what's best for them, not what's best for whatever, and we did it. But no one would ever thought you could have done that. No one ever thought Wendy could have built a diverse studio in a town like this that's incredibly segregated. No one thought you could build a diverse church, And so I've constantly just heard, oh, you can't, you know, oh, well, this is this. And honestly, it was funny. I do not deal with people anymore, and it's really my clarity wears crown, who if I go to them, and they always try, and again, sometimes it's because they see me as a black man. Sometimes it's just the fact of like, you're giving them a vision and they can't see it. So they'll try to dumb down what you're doing. And so like, you know, recently with somebody, it was like, you know, I went in, say, hey, man, I'm trying to do this. And it was like, everything was trying to talk me not to do it. And I'm literally like in my head, I'm like, I am a grown man who's actually produced certain things. Yeah, I understand the risk. I understand whatever. And it was one of those things where every time I've gone to this person, it's always, and I'm like, I'm not dealing with that anymore. And I call somebody else. I'll say, hey, I need to get this done. He's like, oh, absolutely. I'll send you the stuff. And I might get the thing done. I'm just not dealing with people who just do that, because a lot of times they don't get it, and they're not wrong, but I can't live in that anymore.
Sometimes I think, and there's something else that you said that I do want to come back to, but sometimes I think that a cry for practicality is because black and white suffocates authenticity, and people are so afraid to have to think for themselves, to act for themselves. So they want a level of clarity so that they don't have to think through, what does it mean? So even when it comes to practical things with clients that you were talking about that I can be helpful with, even if we were to give an example of the practical thing that we give them to do or give them to think about, most people in this environment would be like, that's not really practical. Like, I don't really understand what you mean by that. I don't understand how to do that. And it's like, well, I'm not going to tell you. Yes. Go think about it. Yes. And then come back to us.
Absolutely. And you know, it's funny. Then it's interesting you say that, because like I get frustrated, because it's like, you know, you'll have a client, you'll be working with them, and then like you're just fighting and fighting, and then one day they're like, oh yeah, and then like they talk about like it's like the revelation. Yeah, we like they've been doing this, and you're like, I've been saying this for the last 5 months, trying to get you to this place, blah blah blah. And here's what ends up happening. And then our good friend Dr. Zoda, who works with us, said this. And it was the most. You know anything about Doc? He's so practical. This is the guy who only drinks black coffee because it's cheap and efficient. Like literally, that's so. Here's what he said to me. He was sitting there, and it was one of those moments where I'm like, I really appreciate you. He was like, I know you're frustrated because people don't recognize, like, you know, like when you've helped them and they'll like take credit for it. He's like, that's why you charge what you charge. That's why they pay you the money. At the end of the day, like, it doesn't matter. I don't care if you get credit or not, but you know what they are going to do? They're going to pay you. And I was like, that makes complete sense, Doc. It helped me. I was like, oh no, that's what they pay me to do. My thing, whoever is not, they don't pay me to give me credit. They pay me to help fix them. Whether they recognize I did it or not, it doesn't matter. Did they change? Yes. Did I get paid? Yes. Did we help? Okay, great. Keep it moving. And so that was super helpful for me to like a very practical way. So anyway, random, but that's to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've been talking about mine. Clarity wears the crown. We're gonna do two things. One, yours, because I remember me and you were walking around Florida State, and Bri was having her existential crisis. What's gonna be my theme this year?
I know, and I was, and let me just add some more to that.
All right.
So I do kind of exist in the middle, and that's my like ongoing. I just want to be one thing so bad. So like, take visionary integrator. I just want to be a really good integrator, or I just want to be a really good visionary. That will never be my life, will never be my story. I'm still coming to terms of acceptance of who I am. So usually I don't really struggle with giving myself a sense of direction, especially when it comes to what do I hope for the year. I also am not very rigid. So for me, if I set like this very rigid routine schedule, I do not grow. It becomes suffocating. I start to feel like I'm like, oh my God. So I will not grow. So for whatever reason, last year I was struggling. I was like, I can't think of anything. I don't know what I should focus on. We've referenced Maven before. This is the part of me that goes to hopelessness. I'm like, nothing matters. Nothing matters to me. Nothing really matters to anyone. It doesn't matter what I focus on, whatever. Like, that's what I'll come to. And when I get to that place, it's really hard it takes time to come out. And I was like, the year is coming. I need to know what's going on. So naturally, we went for a walk. I was like, hey, can we please go for a walk? And while we were walking, I was like, I would really appreciate it if you would just tell me what you think my theme of next year would be. And to which you didn't for a minute. We just walked. You were asking me questions, things like that. The whole time I'm like, I just want to cry. I don't want to talk about this. I want you to give me an answer, but I actually don't really want you to give me an answer because I'd rather live in nothing really matters. So whatever. And at the end of the walk, you're like, Bri, I think your theme is carry your weight. And then you gave me this like one sentence on why you think it should be carry your weight. And then I was like, yep, that's what my theme is. Like, now I can't ignore that. So my focus of the year has been how can I grade or carry my weight, with the premise that I don't carry a lot of things that I should because I'm carrying a lot of things that I shouldn't. So whether that be emotionally, whether that be physically, like a ton of different things. Maybe it be like my role here, responsibilities. And looking back on the year, if I were to say what my expectations were, it's really hard for me to put words to that because I'm so like from the jump. It's like, well, how do you measure carry your weight? I'm probably not the person to ask. It's based off of an internal grid of daily what situations was I supposed to pay attention to that I did, or what situations was I supposed to be part of that I didn't. And I think that I have mostly grown in an awareness of what I should not be carrying. I would say that daily I can tell little things like, oh, I did that and I shouldn't have done that, done that task, or I should have delegated that, or this conversation that I should have had, I didn't have it, or this thing that I've been thinking about, I don't need to be thinking about that. That's not my responsibility. I will say in terms of weight that I should carry, I do think that at levels by nature, I have increased in that. But I definitely don't think that I've hit it at the level that I would say, oh, done, moving on to the next thing. I think largely because I have a pretty strong scarcity mindset when it comes to my energy. It drives a scarcity mindset in general. And it's not from I think when you say that, you think of somebody who doesn't really want to work or doesn't really want to. That's not what I mean by that. What I mean is I save bits of energy for possibilities that something could come up that I'm going to need it for. So there's a little bit of wisdom in it. But practically when I come down to the day or go down to the year, I'm like, I didn't give this year everything that I had in my spiritual growth and how to nurture my brain, how to nurture my mind, is what I mean by my brain, and my physical health. I did more than I usually do, but I didn't give everything that I have because I'm just like trying to save stuff just in case the ball drops, just in case something happens.
Yeah. That's a good point.
So does that make sense?
No, it makes complete sense. And I think one thing I'll tell you this, some people who are very practical, you need measurables. Like, hey, I think a lot of times in a company, hey, you need measurables. How do we know if we won? Here's your scoreboard. I think sometimes personally you need measurables, but also I think depending on how you are, feel matters. It's a feel, it's an eye test. I was literally working with one of our clients today who's a coach, and someone brought them all the statistical things about why this person they didn't think would be great and why they're not doing this. But they went back and watched like film, mobile film. They're like, no, they were like, you can't measure this. There's zero statistics to measure this. I mean, you could get granular with it, but it's like this person, they space the floor. So in basketball, like spacing matters, but because they can shoot the ball and it's just a little bit, it creates greater driving lanes. How do you measure that? Or how do you measure the fact of someone who's a shot blocker in basketball? Somebody drives and they're like, oh, I'm not going in there. They stopped the shot without, they didn't block it. Somebody just like, no, we're not going to let this pass. You can't measure things like that. And so I think also in life, sometimes it's feel. You're like, oh, I can just feel. And I think sometimes because people become, no, tell me practically. I think those matter. But also for those who are out there who are more like intuitive feelers, it's okay to like, I feel this. Because sometimes you're feeling, you're like, yeah, somebody, oh man, you're doing great. You're like, no, something's off, because internally, like you said, somebody will look at you like, Bri, oh no, you did this, Bri, you did this. Man, you did this, you went on a trip, you did this, you had this. And you're like, oh, you really did. Man, look at what you did with the business. And you're like, no, there's still more. Because proper on paper, you're like, oh no, I did pass the test. Yeah. But there was more. And so I think I just want to encourage anybody out there who are feelers that that's okay too, to be able to do that. So.
Yeah, and I will say that I operate more off of categories. So I'll have a strong body, a good store or a wise steward, a beautiful mind. Like I have these categories that I kind of put things in with the goal of just being better than I was the year before. And so for me, it's not my physical health, the epitome of it is if I can bench press this number. Like that will just never be it for me. That's not my goal. But my goal is like, I want to be a healthier person. I want to be 75 and be able to move at a certain speed, a certain pace and level physically. And that requires a level of stewardship now that I'm saying that I didn't do at the best of my ability. I think the second thing that was a huge moment for me, which once this happened in the year, I was like, oh, like this is what carrier weight means. And I have a clear vision of what that looks like for me. So I went home. I was just out of being transparent. So I went home and I had a moment where I was really struggling. Like I got back and we've had a conversation about this. When I have moments where I wouldn't even categorize them as high highs or low lows, it's like inside I can tell that there's something is changing in my soul. Like my inner world is being rewarped and completely changed. And usually it's not even just because of a specific event. It's like maybe something minor. Usually it more has to do with my thoughts that is just changing everything inside. And so I had an event that I went home for. And I realized something massive about one of my drivers. It took me about a week. And for about a week, I didn't really talk. And usually people are like, are you sad? Are you mad? Like, what's going on? And I'm like, guys, I'm good. It's quite confusing for the people around me. I was like, I'm good. I don't have anything to say, though. So I'll let you know when there's something to say. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I'm not bad. I'm not good. Like, I'm trying to figure out what it is. And So we had the conversation finally when I was like, hey, like, can we talk through this? And the biggest thing that I realized was that I have always strategically, subconsciously, but strategically, positioned myself in a manner to where I can affect change. I can have the resources that I want, the access that I want, even not for my own benefit, but for the ability to give it away to others. But I've always gotten it in a manner that mitigates my own personal risk. So I'm going to do it in a way where people don't know that I have the role, that I have the impact, that I have the access that I have. So that way I don't have to deal with what people's opinions are on what I actually think, because they don't know. They don't really know what it is. Like, very little people know, like, the level of what I do, the level of what I'm involved in our world. And I realized, like, how, though it was subconscious, how strategically I have placed myself in that position because of how deeply rooted my fears are. And if I am, like, seen as someone who is in charge or making the call or whatever that might be, I'm going to be hurt. And the thing is that I will be. It's not, no, you're not, like, embrace it because that's not true. Like, that's a lie. Like, it's like, no, I will be. Like, any person who has ever had, like, leadership at the level that I believe that I'm supposed to have in my life, not because I want, like, I don't want it. I'm that person where I'm like, just let me be to the side, do things randomly. Like, I'm good with whatever that means financially, like, all of that. I'm good with it. But I feel such a strong pull towards a belief that I need to, like, fulfill a specific level of leadership for the world that is to come. And that any person who has ever done that has been spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically harmed on so many different levels. And so that's, like, what I've had to grapple with. That's the deepest thing that I've had to grapple with when it comes to realizing that, yeah, I'm not carrying the weight that I'm supposed to carry.
No, that's incredible, because I think what you were able to do is, because I understood that situation. That situation was incredibly impactful, and you could have stayed just at a surface level, but you actually went to the basement. And most people would have felt like you were not, that most people feel like you were carrying actually your weight. But what you realized was that, man, you were hiding underneath. And so I thought that was, I mean, again, incredible, but also goes into the theme of what you were working on this upcoming year. And so that is amazing. And so I appreciate that. Hey guys, I hope today was helpful for you as we come to an end this upcoming year. What I want to encourage you with is to go back, to reflect, to look, to write down the things that you went through. And maybe this upcoming year, maybe you have a theme. Maybe you don't have a theme. Maybe you just have a goal or something for the first quarter. Because here's why this matters. Because what you want to at least do is say, man, maybe what's one thing that I can focus on this upcoming year that can help move the needle, that can help me take that next step to whatever it may be. Because again, I think it's incredibly important. And listen, and let me just give you a practical tip. Listen, if you Chat GPT is amazing, especially if you have the pro, pay for the Chat GPT. Don't use the free joint. All right. But when you get to, like, the one, here's what it does though. You actually can go in there and you can unpack stuff. And when it gets to know you, you really can begin to ask it, hey, this is what I want to focus on this year. Would you put together, what would a daily plan look like? What like that would look in my life if I did this? I'm telling you, I've done that for so many different things. And you know what? It's not going to give you perfect, but at least jumpstart you to begin to think about what you can do moving forward. What my encouragement to you, we want to write new rules, but to write new rules, you got to get motion moving forward. And so, hey, we hope you guys have an incredible Christmas. We hope you guys have an incredible going into your new year. And until next time we see you, keep writing new rules.